Few can draw sharper distinctions between dedicated drive and crippling burnout than Michael Fox. Michael, with profound clarity, draws the line between hard work and burnout. In this part of our conversation, Michael defines what high-achieving yet healthy productivity looks like across our workforce, outlining pragmatism over pessimism. With the insight only firsthand experience can offer, he reveals precise differences between engaged effort and exhausted deterioration. Michael also candidly shares how he adapted his executive approach after his own reckoning, equipping teams with empowered empathy, tactical trust, and permission for self-care. His wisdom guides leaders aspiring to make full use of their capacity without losing grasp of their humanity, and models a mindset shift our work cultures desperately need. Enjoy my conversation with Michael Fox. Hard work versus burnout. I think that's probably a pretty gray area for a lot of people. And I know it's something that I'm always trying to understand better myself. Talk to us a little bit about what that is, like how you differentiate the two between hard work versus burnout, and understanding what kind of boundaries should you be setting in order to stay focused in getting those important things done, but also taking care of yourself.
When I started to understand what burnout is, it didn't become hard to figure out that they're very, very different. Sometimes confusing is people will say teams are burning out when they actually mean they're just working hard. And it was called semantic satiation, where words lose their power or they're not used and they lose their power. So hard work, it's for me characterized by, first of all, high engagement. People are putting in effort, focus, dedication. Burnout is the opposite, where you have very low engagement and is characterized by just this level of emotional, mental exhaustion, physical exhaustion. You can see it in just the way people interact. So hard work, people will have passion and be motivated, and burnout is usually characterized by a loss of interest and some cynicism and negativity, certain amount of detachment. There's a relationship between chronic stress and burnout. Hard work has stress and demands, but it's paired with the ability to rest and recharge. If you can go on vacation, you can take weekends, you can take evenings, and there's always periods of intensity when you have high engagement in something, but that those periods where you can rest and recharge are very different than this unrelenting stress that's chronic even during breaks. So my experience is, if you imagine Sunday night, you go right into things, and there's probably a couple of things happening in the Saturday evening. And vacations are you actually working part-time in the early mornings or late nights while you're actually trying to have a break. And then holidays don't become holidays because you're working, right up until the night of. And that's what we think about with like this inability to rest and recharge, where it's just unrelenting. When you are working hard, there's this sense of accomplishment and satisfaction and pride that's balanced and it's sustainable. It's something that can go on for, in perpetuity, basically. And when you're having burnout, you feel inadequate and helpless, and you don't really have pride in those accomplishments. It's very unsustainable. So there's these very severe mental, emotional, physical consequences to burnout. Some of the things that when you learn, and in the talk I had described how when you look at the themes, because we're in product, we like to look at themes. Burnout has some very significant things like significant mental health issues, severe physical health problems, negative impacts to relationships and social function, unhealthy coping mechanisms like substance misuse. Like, those are not my words; those are words from some of the literature, and so that's very unsustainable in the long term. That was just sort of my list, and you can look at it on the slide, and I'm sure others can add to and talk through. But it became pretty clear when you're in a healthy, hardworking environment that's sustainable versus when you're in a situation that's unsustainable.
So I'm curious, now that you've gone through this experience, how do you, not just for yourself, but also how are you approaching leading a team? And, obviously you want a hardworking team that's engaged and passionate and excited. Are there any things that you've, implemented or you make sure are top of mind as you lead your teams to think about, hey, this is how we need to be. We need to be working hard, but we also need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. What does that look like from this experience now?
The way I approached it is a little bit like as I start with this flywheel combination that I talk about, where the first thing is making sure that you're prioritizing your team's well-being and that of their families. This is basically saying that you give simple encouragement, have a little bit of fun, make an effort to understand your team. And then in some situations, it might mean that you go the extra mile because there's tough advocacy around issues that they may be having. But over time, as you prioritize your team's well-being, you understand the phenomena or the situations that they're under. You get these boosts in morale and productivity and loyalty. It's very much with sort of these people first leadership approaches. And then as a servant leader, what I do is, so I'm prioritizing the needs of others, but what I'm doing differently now is, besides just prioritizing the needs of others and fostering collaboration and making these decisions that benefit the business, I used to do that without precise boundaries for myself. Part of the thing that led me to burnout was I prioritized the global needs of others to such a degree that I got into this like downward negative spiral. And when I take the concept of family first and I am more precise in the boundaries of being a servant leader, and I don't confuse this with misses in like accountability or skill or capabilities. When I say we don't have the skills to do what's being asked of us and we need to figure out how to do that. Or, you or the team is not delivering and we need to figure out how to solve those problems. And being a little bit innovative with collaboration and communications, it's a bit of this flywheel effect for my teams where you've got these characteristics of loyalty, high productivity, morale. They're there usually because they're engaged in the business and they want to see it succeed, and they're engaged in the products and want to see them succeed. And then for me, I'm exercising as a better servant leader than I was in the past because I've put in some of these boundaries. And then I talk a little bit about when you, in order to serve others, you need to serve yourself. And that's one of the parts that for in servant leadership has been hard because, there's this confirmation bias in our job. I mean, it's literally about making others successful, our customers, our employees, and our teams, and our business partners, our engineering partners. But the thing I've really come to realize is that not doing this really sets a bad example. So demonstrating the importance of work-life balance, being hardworking myself, and calling out others when they're going down the track of burnout or negative behaviors, all around this theme of, you need to take care of yourself to be able to take care of others.
It really reminds me of, when you're sitting on a plane and they're like, hey, put on your oxygen mask first. It's very, very reminiscent of that idea, right? Of when you talk about taking care of yourself. And I think that's fantastic.
And the thing I've also sort of come to think about is the fact that there's a leadership style. I think it goes by different words, but it's sort of like it's called pace setting, where you demand high expectations of others and you place those on yourself as well. And you constantly are looking for better ways to perform and better ways to be more efficient and to improve the productivity and the energy and output and the results within a company. And that leadership style, it works really well in some situations. We always want to be better. So there's this bias that we bring into, for example, we want to work better. We want to just do that one extra little thing, and just having some extra awareness of what's the real cost of that.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I read this, but someone once told me, or I read, I think in ethics, they teach you like, if your mom shouldn't be reading about it in the newspaper the next day, it's probably something wrong. If, you have to like explain in an email, if you have explained to your family why emailing them, somebody else, or doing something was more important than being at dinner with them, that's usually a pretty good case that like maybe you're not doing things in quite the sustainable way that you should be.
I love that, especially as a parent with small kids. That time is absolutely invaluable, and I definitely do my best to try to protect that. So from this, I mean, I think we've touched a little bit on it, but I'd love to go a little bit deeper in kind of this third area, which is, you've talked a little bit about the learnings, but what else would you like to share as far as like resources and things that you've learned from going through this experience now? Talking about it last year, or earlier this year, excuse me, and now having seeing that over half the room is raising their hand saying, I'm dealing with this issue. Having other people, like myself, reach out to you and say, hey, talk to me more about this. This is important. So what kind of resources, what kind of thoughts would you leave people with?
I didn't really know what to expect from giving a small talk on this topic, and people have been just very receptive about the, speaking about it. I've shared the talk with a few dozens of people afterwards, and they've even thanked me for even just talking about it, because it matters and it connects with people at a very emotional level. If folks want to watch the talk, they're welcome to see that. I can provide the link.
Yeah, I'll definitely include that in the show notes.
Yeah. And then, I think just talking about it, but be aware that a lot of people are going to be reluctant to discuss the topic. There's a lot of reasons for that. In particular, as you're a leader, it's a very, very complex topic. So I work to stay very grounded, understand that burnout's very misunderstood, and just having some open communication. I think I would encourage folks to really, there can be a couple links that we could include that I think are probably pretty useful in things that I've learned since I gave this talk in May, I believe. So there was a couple of studies that provide strong context to some really important trends. First is that actually there's a disproportionate amount of energy and burnout symptoms in different generations. So we've all, I think, probably worked with products like product topics, like how do you design for multiple generations of product users, right? Or how do you manage teams of multi-generation team members? And actually to have awareness that these things don't affect demographics in the same way. There's also some statistics like that are useful to sort of just set some context. And then the second thing is there's just been a lot of, I think, so I'll provide a couple of links to just some general context that people are just interested in the topic of burnout. McKinsey did a whole study and released just this November around this topic. And it was just very direct in terms of some of the findings that they've had. And it was also very global, so it put a little bit of different global context to things. And then there's a couple of other links that I'll share. So, I'm happy to just tell people to just talk about it, but be careful, be grounded, and understand it just a little bit. And then take a little bit of time to just sort of level set on some of these statistics, because the thing that I've really not been able to solve, Jonathan, or really think through yet, is in the talk, I talk about this idea of, I think I mentioned it, semantic satiation, where we use the word stress or chronic stress. We don't use the word chronic stress. But like, it's everywhere. And in these statistics, you would think that, or these reports, like you'd think it's not a big deal. And then you sort of begin to understand the costs personally and economically. And it's a much bigger deal than people might think. So I would encourage anybody who thinks they're suffering from burnout, make sure you get the right help. If I had to leave with one thing, that's probably the most important, is make sure you get the right help. And that can take many forms, but it's just important that you do something.
I think that's a great thing to end on for people. I think that it also reminds me very much of Brene Brown's work on vulnerability and how difficult it is for people to understand what that is and how to apply it. And as you said, it starts with being vulnerable, willing to have these conversations, talking about it. It's amazing.
Some context. I mean, one of the number one contributors to workplace burnout is toxic behavior. And then, one of the second largest ones is actually role ambiguity. And interestingly enough, that's one of those ones where product leaders often have highly ambiguous roles at times.
Mm-hmm.
If their role is not tightly defined inside of an organization, for example.
Yeah.
And then, big surprise, interpersonal and role conflict are the next two biggest contributors to burnout. And those are all things that, we're managing and working, through a lot of those things at times in our profession. So there's some of these things just as product leaders out there, just be aware of, you're in that hot zone just by the nature of, even if you work at a great place, hopefully you have clear role clarity, and then, some of these other things aren't as quite as important. So I will provide like maybe a little slide deck or something with some links for folks to access.
That would be great. It'd be great. Okay. Michael, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing your story with me and those that will be listening to this, and sharing your wisdom from your hands-on experience of understanding burnout versus hard work, and being vulnerable in our conversation, and helping people understand that there are boundaries to be set so that they can continue to be hardworking and sustainably contribute and have the impact that they want in their lives.